Welcome to Tales from the Trenches, Season 4. Today, I'm honored to have Penny Harris with me.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in the zone. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
Penny Harris coaches nonprofit leaders, including fundraisers, to focus on the mission to renew donors and make them partners providing a community service. For more than 35 years, Penny's professional experience includes establishing, managing, and growing fundraising programs and campaigns. She's experienced in developing relationships with donors and has interviewed 1,000 donors throughout the U.S. Before becoming a professional fundraiser, Penny was a community volunteer leader with the League of Women Voters. For 10 years, she served at the local, state, and national level. She produced the first candidate meetings in her small community and produced the first statewide debate for governor and U.S. Senate with public broadcasting. It was leading these events that she learned fundraising. Her first professional position was with the Maine Public Broadcasting Company. She was appointed by the governor to the University of Maine System Board of Trustees and served there for 10 years. So welcome, Penny.
Thank you. Welcome. Good to be here.
Let me be pragmatic for a second. So those 4 charities that you gave to at the end of 24, what's going to happen in the end of 25? Are you going to give to them again?
Probably not. I think one of them I may, but because I like them all and they all knew me.
Right.
They had different kinds of excuses, but basically they just didn't. And I don't know how often that happens to other donors. It
happens quite often. I've been in the business for more than 30 years, and I see donors get ticked off at something, right? They don't like a board decision that was made, or they don't like, A, B, or C. And they threaten, or sometimes they even do, they withhold their support. And I've often sat down with them and I said, boards come and go, but you still believe in the mission of what this organization is trying to accomplish, right? Yeah. Well, don't punish the end user because you have a disagreement. I said, it's great to voice your disagreement. I said, but usually you're doing it after the fact, right? The board has already made their decision.
Right.
Which actually comes to a great point that so often boards and bosses don't actually include donors in that preliminary decision-making, right? They're seen as, you're the bank, we're going to sit on high on some mountain and come up with a brilliant plan that you're going to love and you're going to fund, without including them in that direction or discovery. And, some of these people I've come to realize have big dollars because they're really smart people and they're very successful in their business and will definitely be able to help you get from A to B. Maybe they have a totally different solution that you've never thought of, but you aren't asking them. Now you're just asking them to fund the solution that someone else came up with.
No, you're right. And I totally think that donors need to be more of the team. I see the donors as a team. That's why they keep giving, if they feel that and feel like they belong to something that's serving their community. But most of those 1,000 donors that I've interviewed were donors, was part of a pre-campaign study that I would do and go around. And first I had just a list of questions. That's what I was taught. And I threw the questions away and I just had a nice conversation over the time. I would ask all those questions, but was more of a conversation. And I learned a lot there. And that's what you're saying. And I had a thing happen. I will share that I visited this, had an interview with this, he's a national CEO and founder of this company that's a national company. And he had given six figures a couple of times. And when I sat down and talked with him, he was really excited about the organization and the mission. And he said, I've got to give some money here. He lived in another state on the other side of the country. And he said, I want you to tell the CEO that if he gets scrunched, tight for money, come to me. I do not want that mission to go down under. And so when I came home and I told the CEO that, he was so mad that I had done that. I didn't get the job for the campaign. He said, you did a great job. Everybody, the calls, they came in and said they enjoyed the interview with you. He had a whole list of things. But he said, you don't understand the ethos of and I don't know if that meant he just didn't want to go talk to the donor, I think. He didn't like what that donor had said for some reason, which I did not expect. But that's the kind of thing that's out there in the ether over these fundraising, which fundraising is where we all come together to make our communities better. I always like to use the symphony. It gives jobs to musicians. It gives people like me a concert to go to. And when concerts are in town, people come to restaurants and stay in hotels because they're there for the mission.
Right.
And the city is an advantage to have a symphony because it's building a better community.
So you've done a bunch of those interviews, and I did them as well when I was consulting. So whether they were called feasibility studies or planning action studies, they'd gone through a whole bunch of names. And it used to be that you hired outside firms because the outside consultants, and I was one of them at the time, would say, hey, you know what? People will be more honest and transparent with an outsider and be critical than they would if there was someone on the inside coming and conducting those interviews. My attitude to that has changed like 180, and I think that it should all be done internally as opposed to externally. I see you nodding. So are you on the same
Absolutely.
path as me?
Yes, and I do that. I will not do any more feasibility studies, and I've only done it once, but I coached the fundraiser through the entire process. I went with her for a couple of interviews so she could get that. And then I helped her with the report and presenting it to the CEO and then the board. And she thanked me 1,000 times that she said, oh, I feel so much better, because the reason she now has the relationship with the donors. I'm leaving. So there's no reason for me to have a relationship with a donor. And I quit a job over that. I was getting paid, and I thought that the CEO, the board people would come with me or go by them, and they wouldn't. And so I quit. They were furious at me, but I said, you're wasting your money.
And were people as frank with the internal staff conducting it as they would be with you as an external consultant?
I couldn't see any difference. I talked to her a little bit, and I never, in the 1,000 that I did, ever had a conversation that I thought they wouldn't have. There was one organization, a small museum, that was worried about the CEO because he'd been there a long time, and but their reasons were valid. I shared them with the board. The board took care of it. So, um, yeah, I almost think that they would be more likely to share with the current, and especially the fundraiser, not the CEO, but the fundraiser. Because I've had donors say they don't wanna be asked. They wanna meet the fundraiser, I mean, the CEO, but they wanna be asked by probably the fundraiser. And I've had other fundraisers talk about that too, that they feel leveraged, they feel like, they're if the when they use the top people to get, because 'cause they're trying to get the money, rather than have the donors feel good about helping the community have something they don't have.
Sure, sure. Wow. So you've been in the fundraising business and kind of done it all over many, many years. What's your favorite part about being a professional fundraiser?
That's a good question. I think I noticed after the children's center was built at the hospital, the whole 6th floor, and I drove by the hospital, or I was still working there. I walked through the children's center, and I thought, I helped have this. So I think it's kind of helping the community to be better. And certainly it is the relationships. And and I must say that in my posts on LinkedIn and now Substack, I get more donor type people saying how much they like what I write than I do fundraisers and CEO.
Really? All right. So let's take the flip side of that and say, what about fundraising do you not like?
The focus on money. When I'm only valuable for the money, and they don't care about renewing the donors, especially if the gift's too small. It wasn't the way I wanted to live. I mean, I ran the Children's Miracle Network one a couple of years, and I'd have these kids bring literally little bags of money. They'd gone up and down the street and collected. And they said, "We want to help sick children," when they gave it to me. And I just it doesn't matter how much money. The fact is that with your heart, you're giving, and you're gonna be better in the community and feel better if you have been accepted giving, that you haven't been judged because your money isn't enough.
Penny, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you. There's a reason that you've been in the business so long. Your passion just shines through,
Thank
and I
you.
think anyone who chats with you sees that. If people wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, my email is penny@Renewable Philanthropy, and I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the quickest way, and I'm on Substack, but I think that's a little harder. I think LinkedIn is probably the best, and my email, penny@Renewable Philanthropy, and I have a website, too, which is renewablephilanthropy.com, which needs to be
Amazing.
updated.
Amazing. Penny, thank you so much for your time. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
It's been fun to talk with you. Yeah, thank you very much.